My mother was Clive Lloyd's girlfriend, a big shot in the capital business circle, when he was still a nobody. When he finally overcame all obstacles and was ready to marry her, my mother and I were sold into a foreign country. To protect me, she was blinded and had her spine broken. When she died, there wasn't an inch of her body unharmed. Clive arrived just in time to save me, who was traumatized by the ordeal. I handed him one of my mother's severed fingers. On that finger was the blood-stained engagement ring he had personally placed there. I watched as he tore off the rosary beads from his wrist. He had completely turned into a demon. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. When those people came chasing after us, Mom used her last bit of strength to hide me in a smelly rubbish heap. The last thing she said to me was, "Annie, hide well, don't make a sound. No matter what happens, don't come out, wait for Dad to rescue you." After saying this, she fumbled to hug me, cupped my face, and kissed me hard. Her eyes had become two bloody holes. All the bones in her body had been broken. She couldn't run away with me anymore. I did as she said, covering my mouth tightly, not making a single sound. Her screams were right next to my ear, each one more shrill than the last. My whole body was shaking, tears flowing non-stop, but I didn't dare cry out loud. In the end, she couldn't scream anymore, and the people beating her stopped. Through the gaps, I saw Mom's body covered in blood and bruises, struggling to crawl on the ground. Her broken fingers groped aimlessly on the ground, searching. Finally, it seemed she found what she was looking for. Using her last bit of strength, she slipped it onto her broken finger. The next second, I saw those people approaching her with knives again. They chopped off her fingers one by one. They were laughing maniacally, without a shred of humanity. But I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my eyes wide, trying to remember each of their faces clearly. I didn't listen to Mom. After those people burned her body and left, I crawled out from the rubbish heap. As dawn was breaking, I found the only thing left of Mom, a severed finger. On the finger was a ring, covered in blood. I recognized that ring. Every time Mom showed me that ring, she would smile so sweetly. She'd say, "This is the first thing your dad bought me with the money he earned from his job. It was very cheap, but it's my most precious treasure." Later, Dad made lots and lots of money. He bought Mom many more expensive pieces of jewelry. But Mom always wore this silver ring. When she died, she was still desperately trying to find this ring with her last breath. So, I must give this ring to Dad. I clutched Mom's severed finger close to my heart, hidden beneath my clothes, and crawled back into the rubbish heap. When Clive dug me out of the pile of rubbish, I was filthy and reeking, my face so dirty it was unrecognizable. His eyes blazed red as he held me tightly in his arms. "Annie," he called my name, his voice trembling. "Daddy's taking you home now." I didn't cry. Instead, I reached into my dress and pulled out Mom's finger, handing it to him. "Mom's gone. Only this finger is left." I stared wide-eyed, tears welling up but refusing to fall. Clive clenched his jaw, veins bulging at his temples. He was trying hard to control himself, to hold back, but in the end, as he touched the finger, feeling the wedding ring that was barely recognizable, large teardrops fell onto my face. "Annie, let's take Mom home." His voice was hoarse as he carefully tucked Mom's finger away and lifted me up. But as he stood, he suddenly collapsed to his knees. I listened as he cried out Mom's name in heart-wrenching sobs. He yanked off his rosary beads, shattering them. "Melissa." He whispered Mom's name once more. When he finally stood up, I saw his blood-red eyes and knew he had been transformed by grief. After returning to the capital, Clive kept me by his side, not allowing me to leave his sight for a moment. I witnessed my mother being beaten to death, which left me completely traumatized. From that day on, I refused to speak a single word. He erected a cenotaph for my mother. Apart from the day of the burial, he never visited to pay his respects again. However, he carefully preserved the severed finger, keeping it close to him. My mother was gone, leaving me as her only daughter. When I grew up, I would be married off with a dowry, and that would be that. Therefore, the position of Clive Lloyd's wife was still hotly contested. My maternal grandfather sent my aunt over. She was my mother's half-sister. Upon seeing me, she burst into tears, holding me tightly. Poor Annie, losing your mother at such a young age. What will become of you? Grandfather said, a blood relative is better than a stranger marrying in and mistreating Annie. My aunt hugged me affectionately, stealing glances at Clive, unable to hide the admiration in her eyes. Clive, I only feel for Annie and my sister. I just want to take care of Annie in my sister's place. I looked at him too. He sat on the sofa, his expression as impassive as ever. He was only fiddling with the new rosary beads on his wrist. After a while, he nodded. Then stay and take care of Annie. Daisy Ward, my mother's best friend, was furious when she learned that Clive had allowed Kate Webb to stay. She stormed into our house, accusing Clive of being heartless and unfaithful. Melissa's body is barely cold, and you've already moved a new woman in, she exclaimed. Even if it's Annie's aunt, Melissa hardly had any contact with them when she was alive. How much genuine care could they have? I don't trust the situation at all. If you insist on remarrying, then I'll take Annie with me. Clive stood behind his desk, tall and dignified. A string of rosary beads adorned his slender wrist. He fingered the beads as he looked up at Daisy. Shadows from the window cast a faint light across the room, illuminating his handsome, refined features. Daisy found herself momentarily speechless. If you're truly concerned about Annie, why don't you stay and look after her? Clive suggested. I. Daisy stammered, her face flushing bright red. Her earlier indignation seemed to evaporate instantly. Well, I suppose I could stay for a few days, just until Annie adjusts, she conceded. And so Daisy stayed as well. That night, I overheard the servants gossiping. Apparently, my aunt, Kate, was beside herself with anger but didn't dare confront Clive directly. Instead, she had locked herself in her room and spent the entire evening smashing things. I don't like my Aunt Kate. When Mum was struggling, Grandpa and the others never gave us a second glance. It was only after Dad was taken back by the Lloyds that they started showing up with fake smiles. Mum's kind and soft-hearted, but I've inherited Clive's cold nature. After all, even though I'm young, I remember clearly. Grandpa used to call me a waste of money. Aunt Kate said I looked just like my mum, and I'd grow up to be a man-eater too. They're not good people. I'm not particularly fond of Daisy Ward either, even though she's one of Mum's best friends. When Dad was poor, she urged Mum to break up with him, saying he wasn't good enough. Then she'd turn around and secretly bring Dad chicken soup and slip him money. Later, when Dad returned to the Lloyds, she scared Mum, saying Dad had made it big and surely wouldn't want her anymore, that he wouldn't marry her. Mum believed it and cried in secret several times. Once, she even quietly packed her bags and ran away with me. When Dad found out, he searched for us day and night without rest. After finding us, Dad wouldn't let go of Mum. After that, their wedding plans were put on the agenda. Because he insisted on marrying Mum, Dad knelt for 3 days and nights, fainting several times. Only then did those old-fashioned Lloyd elders reluctantly give in. My favorite is Mum's other best friend, Haley Shaw, the kindest and most gentle lady in Capital's high society. She and Mum were university roommates. She never looked down on Mum for being poor back then. When Mum was having me, neither she nor Dad had much money, so they could only go to a cheap hospital. It was Haley who paid to transfer Mum to the best hospital. She even sent Mum to the most expensive postnatal care center. Now Mum's gone. All those women out there are eager to become my stepmother. Only Aunt Haley, upon hearing the news, fainted from crying and is still in the hospital. Clive took me to visit Aunt Haley at the hospital. I was shocked when I saw her. She was thin and haggard, her eyes swollen and red from crying. As soon as she saw me, tears streamed down her face. And she held me tightly, refusing to let go. Clive sat to the side, his eyes moist as he watched Haley and me embrace and cry. After we had cried enough, Haley asked someone to take me to wash my face and have some snacks. She then asked Clive, "Have you found the people who hurt Melissa?" "We've found those who carried out the attack, but we still have no leads on the mastermind behind it," he replied. Haley was silent for a moment, then said, "Melissa disappeared after Frida Kent invited her out for dinner and shopping. Clive, Frida was once the marriage partner your father chose for you. Do you think? Clive's face darkened. There's no evidence at the moment. Haley spoke softly. The Kent family has business in various countries, involved in both legal and illegal activities. Clive fingered his rosary beads and let out a deep chuckle. Yes, the Kent family is powerful. Haley pressed her lips together. Clive, what if we do this? You marry into our Shaw family. As she spoke, tears began to fall again. If our two families join forces, you'll gain more power. And it'll be easier to avenge Melissa quickly. Once you've avenged Melissa, we can divorce, and my wish will be fulfilled. Her words were filled with deep emotion and sincerity. Standing outside the door, I was deeply moved by what I heard. Looking at Clive, I could see he was touched. But Haley, this would be too unfair to you. Melissa and I have known each other for nearly a decade. We weren't sisters by blood, but our bond was stronger than that. Her death was so tragic. Haley's voice broke as she spoke. She turned to Clive. If I can't do something for her, I'll never be at peace. Faced with such clear and pure eyes, it seemed impossible for anyone to refuse. I thought he would agree. After all, he had just returned to the Lloyd family and his position was precarious. Although he had endless money, he had no power or influence. Marrying the eldest daughter of the Shaw family, this darling of the capital's high society, would transform his situation in the Lloyd family overnight. But Clive refused. He stood up. Through the crack in the door, I could only see his slim silhouette. I couldn't tell what his expression was at that moment. A faint blush was visible on Haley's cheeks. There's no need for that. It wouldn't be fair to you, to say the least, Clive said. If I were to marry someone else, I wouldn't be able to face Melissa in the afterlife. Clive. Haley was stunned, seemingly not expecting him to say such things. Clive raised his hand to stop her from continuing. I understand you're doing this for Melissa. I appreciate the thought. Haley lowered her eyes and sobbed. Clive told her to rest well and then turned to leave. As he exited the room, he scooped me up into his arms. We returned to our home, the small flat where the three of us had lived for 5 years. He made lunch for me, 1 meat dish, 1 vegetable dish, and a soup. After eating, we rested on the balcony lounge chair, just like we used to when Mom was still alive. Annie, he said. He stroked my hair, his gaze full of tenderness as he looked at me. I lay on his chest. I don't know how long it was before I felt a damp patch on my back where my clothes had become wet. I wanted to lift my head to look at him, but his large hand firmly held the back of my head in place. I knew it. He must be crying again. After 3 days of seemingly peaceful coexistence, my Aunt Kate and Daisy finally lost their composure and started arguing. The argument escalated until they were physically fighting each other. Kate had a lock of her hair pulled out, while Daisy's face was scratched. I was traumatized again and hid in the cupboard, refusing to come out. Clive lost his temper. Both Kate and Daisy were sent away. They were supposed to be here to take care of me. Instead, they had made my condition worse. My grandfather's side of the family didn't dare to interfere. Daisy, knowing she was in the wrong, temporarily behaved herself. 3 months after my mom's death, the Lloyd family elders began ordering Clive to marry and have children. Your marriage isn't just for you, it's for your older brother and the entire Lloyd family. Of course, the more children you have, the better. You should have at least 3 sons, and the firstborn must be given to your older brother. Poor Henry, always sickly. He's kind-hearted and doesn't want to ruin another girl's happiness, so he refuses to marry. But as elders, we can't let him be without an heir. The Kent family doesn't mind your past or Annie's existence. They're still willing to give their daughter to you in marriage. Pick a date, and let's settle the wedding arrangements. Back then, he had knelt for 3 days and nights to marry my mom. The Lloyd family had a sickly eldest son, and they feared something might happen to this younger son they had found, leaving the family line to end. So they reluctantly agreed to the marriage. But my mom died. Now Frida Kent, still not giving up, wants to marry into the family and become my stepmother. I suddenly vaguely recall some fragments from the past. Frida Kent was a spoiled princess. She met my mom through Haley. She acted as if she wanted to befriend my mom. My mom was soft-hearted and easily influenced. She had no sense of caution. She gradually became close with Frida, often going out together. One night, Frida couldn't hold back and laid her cards on the table. At first, she patiently tried to persuade my mom to let go. Later, seeing my mom's stubborn refusal, she started making threats. "Melissa Webb, don't say I didn't warn you. Let me tell you, for a commoner like you, I could crush 10 of you with one hand. If you don't break up with Clive, I'll have you sold abroad. I'm telling you, the traffickers there are vicious, they'll harvest all your organs." I vaguely remember Frida's fierce and threatening demeanor at the time. But my mom didn't seem scared at all, she just kept smiling foolishly. I don't know why, but I always thought Frida was particularly naive and simple-minded. A bit of a paper tiger, if you ask me. I remember once when my mom took me out for a day trip. Out of nowhere, an ugly bug landed on Frida's handbag. She let out a scream that could have raised the roof, nearly fainting on the spot. My mom rushed over and swatted the bug dead with one swift smack. Then Frida, staring at the bug's corpse, trembled for ages before passing out completely. I'm not trying to underestimate her intelligence or capabilities, it's just that someone like her doesn't seem capable of doing something like that. Of course, I've no idea if her family, the Kents, were involved or not. After the Lloyds pressured my dad to remarry, he arranged for me to meet Frida Kent. I truly hadn't expected Frida to have changed so much. It was as if a flower that had been blooming beautifully suddenly withered from lack of water. She had become shriveled, listless, her whole being in a daze, her eyes cloudy and lifeless. But when she saw me, her eyes suddenly lit up. If Clive hadn't held her back, she would have surely thrown herself at me. I was startled, and Clive's expression turned quite grim. But then Frida suddenly dropped to her knees with a thud. "Mr. Lloyd," she said, clutching at my dad's trouser leg, refusing to let go no matter what. Clive hadn't even pulled his leg away when Frida's face suddenly crumpled. And she began to cry. "Melissa comes to me every night, as soon as I fall asleep, she's there. She keeps blaming me, saying I sold her to a foreign country. She resents me, haunting me every night. For 3 months, I haven't had a single good night's sleep. I keep begging her, but nothing works. Finally, she relented a bit, making me swear to take good care of Annie. She says there are bad people around Annie and you, and she's worried sick. She says my family is rich and powerful. The only one she knows with underworld connections. She also said if I can't protect Annie well, if Annie loses even a single hair, she'll come and take me away." By the end, Frida had collapsed onto the floor, crying hysterically. I promised and swore over and over before she finally believed me and agreed to leave. "Mr. Lloyd, I'm begging you, I really can't take it anymore." I stared at Frida in disbelief. Clive was also looking at her. "So, the idea of the arranged marriage was yours?" "Yes," I threw a tantrum and pestered my dad until he agreed. "Frida Kent, I have only one question, do you like me?" Frida's little head shook like a rattled drum. As if looking at some terrifying monster, she waved her hands repeatedly. "I don't like you, Clive. I wouldn't dare to like you even if I died." Clive fingered his rosary beads. "Marriage is absolutely out of the question. But you can move into the Lloyd house as my fiancé to take care of Annie." Frida was overjoyed. Clive then added, "For 1 year only." When he said this, he wasn't looking at Frida, but at me. Then, he stroked my face. "Annie, trust Daddy. At most, you only need to wait for 1 year." It had been 6 months since my mum passed away. Rumors were circulating about Clive Lloyd and Frida Kent's engagement. That night, Haley sat at my mum's grave for the entire evening. The Shaw family searched everywhere for her, worried sick. They asked Clive about her whereabouts. When he found Haley at my mum's grave, she had already collapsed from exhaustion, falling limp into his arms. Upon waking, she looked at Clive with tears in her eyes. "You know the Kent family is the prime suspect, yet you're marrying Frida. How can you face Melissa in the afterlife?" Clive's expression remained impassive. "The Kents are powerful. It's a necessary compromise. I told you I could help." "Haley, I simply can't stand by and watch Frida continue living her privileged life. I can't bear to see her enjoying wealth and luxury. She wants to marry me, doesn't she? So I'll grant her wish. What could be more satisfying than having her by my side, tormenting her day and night? Haley's expression softened. So you're doing this for revenge? Yes. Clive. Haley couldn't resist gently grasping his hand. You poor thing. Having to put up with someone as vapid as Frida Kent is such a waste of your talents. For the first time, Clive didn't immediately pull his hand away. He said, "What choice do I have when I'm at their mercy, beneath them in status?" At that moment, Haley looked at him, her heart aching terribly for his situation. As the 1-year anniversary of my mother's passing approached, Clive took full control of the Lloyd family, officially stepping into the heart of the capital's elite circle. With the Kent family's support behind him, known for their shady dealings, Clive's hands hadn't remained entirely clean over the past year. Those around him grew increasingly cautious, afraid to put a foot wrong. Even I found myself frightened at times, watching his expressionless face as he casually uttered words that could determine the fate of multiple lives. The warm, gentle Clive who had loved my mother so deeply seemed to have vanished completely. A week before my mother's death anniversary, Clive's new company abroad was set to open. He decided to take Frida and me to Country F. The night before our departure, he called Haley Shaw. "The show's about to begin, Haley. Want to join us?" he asked. On the other end of the line, Haley laughed heartily. "Of course, Clive. I'll come with you." Over the past 6 months, his way of addressing Haley had somehow changed to a more familiar tone. In business, Haley had been pouring her heart and soul into helping him. Sometimes, when I'm lost in thought, I wonder, if I had to have a stepmother, perhaps my mom would have chosen Haley. She seems truly flawless, without a single fault to pick at. Even Clive has gradually opened his heart to her over the past year, hasn't he? The day we arrived in Country F, it was pouring with rain. By the afternoon, the rain had stopped. Half the sky was ablaze with a fiery sunset. Clive picked me up and stood there, gazing at the sky burning like fire in the distance. I knew he must be thinking of Mom again. I was too. I remembered the big fire that night. I remembered Mom's last scream when the fire started. I looked up at him. His eyes were very red. I wasn't sure if it was from the fiery sky reflecting in them. On the third evening, Clive informed Haley that there would be a dinner party that night. Haley understood that tonight, everything would be settled. Stylists and makeup artists brought in racks of beautiful gowns. Haley finally chose a scarlet mermaid dress with a long train. The dinner party was held on a cruise ship. As Haley boarded the ship, the heel of her high-heeled shoe accidentally got caught in a gap on the gangway and broke off. She felt inexplicably uneasy. The ship was brightly lit, with armed security guards and mercenaries in black standing on the deck. For a moment, she had the urge to turn back. But then Clive appeared. He wore a black coat over a matching black suit. Tall and elegant, he exuded charm. He looked down at Haley and gave her a faint smile. "Haley, come here." As if enchanted, Haley lifted her skirt and walked up the gangway barefoot, step by step. She extended her hand, but Clive didn't take it. He held a cigarette between his fingers, the smoke curling up into the night air. "Go and change your shoes first. I'll finish this cigarette," he said. Haley reluctantly left. Clive leaned against the side of the boat, gazing out at the endless expanse of water. He smoked the cigarette slowly, calmly, taking one drag after another. Finally, he lowered his eyes. He looked at the wedding ring on his ring finger. "Melissa," he murmured. He gently touched the ring, his expression softening with tenderness. "Wish me luck. I hope everything goes smoothly." Many years later, I would still vividly remember that night. Clive didn't deliberately try to shield me from those gruesome scenes. I was 6 years old at the time, but my childhood had already come to an end. When Haley entered the ballroom, impeccably dressed and ready for the event, she was immediately struck by the sparse attendance. "Why, are there so few people?" she murmured, but her words trailed off, as she realized these weren't the Country F dignitaries she had expected. Instead, she recognized almost everyone present. Her eyes first landed on Daisy Ward, then on my Aunt Kate and grandfather. Haley's face began to pale as the realization set in. She instinctively took a step back, only to find her path blocked by security guards. The grand, ornate doors closed behind her with a resounding click of the lock. Haley started to tremble. Her eyes darted around the room until they finally settled on Clive. Seated in a corner sofa, dressed entirely in black. She let out a sigh of relief, as if she'd found a lifeline. "Clive," she began, but her voice suddenly caught in her throat. Two large, dark-skinned mercenaries threw what looked like a bloody mass of flesh onto the floor. Barely a meter from where she stood. The overwhelming stench of blood and the sight of the writhing, mangled form caused Haley to scream. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed to the floor. "Do you recognize him?" Clive asked in a grave tone. It was only then that Haley realized the heap of flesh was a man. A man she knew well, Henry Lloyd, Clive's sickly older brother. Haley's scream suddenly stopped. She stared at Clive with wide eyes. You. Clive's expression remained cold and calm, like a deep, still pond. He didn't look at Haley, but instead turned to the others in the room who had gone pale. "Tell me everything you've done, one by one. Otherwise, he will be your fate." Before Clive had finished speaking, my Aunt Kate eagerly stood up, her legs shaking. "Clive, if I tell you everything, you won't kill me, will you?" Clive simply fiddled with the wedding ring on his finger. "You know in your heart whether what you've done deserves death." "Clive, I'll tell you everything, I'll confess it all. I encouraged Dad not to give my sister living expenses, to neglect her. I also falsely accused my sister of stealing my money, which caused Dad to hit her. When you two were dating, I was the one who reported to the school that my sister was in a relationship, almost getting her expelled. When my sister was giving birth to Annie, I tried to sneak into your room while she was in confinement, but the nanny caught me. After my sister died, I wanted to marry you under the pretense of taking care of Annie. But I really had nothing to do with my sister's death. Clive, you know that Dad and I don't have the ability to reach all the way to Country F." Clive slowly nodded. That's correct. He knew that Kate had nothing to do with Melissa's death. He also knew that Kate's petty, nauseating tactics were far from deserving of death. But he couldn't control himself anymore. "You may not deserve to die, but that tongue of yours is truly disgusting." "Clive." Clive closed his eyes. "Annie, please save me." As she was being dragged away, she looked at me desperately. I closed my eyes too. Her voice faded away. I thought to myself, she would never be able to chatter annoyingly again. Daisy's face turned as white as a sheet. But she still gritted her teeth and stood up. "After you started dating Melissa, she introduced you to me. I fell for you the moment I saw you. But you never really looked at me. I was desperate to make you break up with Melissa, thinking that if you did, I'd have a chance. I was the one who kept telling Melissa that you were too poor. That you were an orphan who had been trafficked. That you weren't good enough for her. But she never listened to any of it. Instead, she felt even more sympathy for you and treated you even better. Later, when the Lloyd family found you and took you back, your status changed dramatically. I kept scaring her about it. I told her that now that you were successful, there would be plenty of beautiful women after you, and that you'd surely abandon her soon. At first, she didn't believe it. But after I kept saying it and gave her many examples, she foolishly started to believe it. But you still didn't break up. Instead, you were going to get married. I was nearly driven mad with jealousy, but I never wanted Melissa to die. I just felt that Melissa and I were both ordinary girls. But why was her fate so good that she could marry a man like you? And be loved by you like that? I no longer fantasized about being with you. I just wanted her to be separated from you. I just wanted her to become exactly like me again. It was her, it was Haley. Daisy suddenly pointed at Haley Shaw. It was her who tricked me, saying she had a way to make Melissa break up with you. I was bewitched by her and believed it. At this point, Daisy covered her face and burst into tears. But I never, ever thought she would have someone kill Melissa. If I had known it would be like this, I would never have done it, even if it killed me. I stared at the sobbing Daisy. Yet in my heart, I thought, one's first instinct is indeed never wrong. For as long as I can remember, I've never liked her. But my mom always spoke of how Daisy had bought her breakfast for an entire term when they were in school. She'd say, "Your Aunt Daisy may have a sharp tongue, but she's got a heart of gold." When Mom had no money for food and was nearly starving, it was your Aunt Daisy who helped Mom get through it. But what she didn't know is that people change. After Daisy was dragged out, my grandfather lost control of his bladder out of shock. He had an affair in middle age, abandoning his wife and daughter. While not the worst of sins, it wasn't insignificant. Relying on his modest wealth, he indulged in reckless pleasure-seeking. My grandmother died of anger because of him. My mom endured countless hardships and humiliations in her youth. Before my mom's body was even cold, he was eager to push his beloved young daughter to become my stepmother. I despised him. But now, looking at his white hair and his blank, slack-jawed expression of shock, I felt an indescribable sadness and desolation. If Mom were still alive, with her soft heart and kindness, she surely wouldn't hold a grudge against him. The crowd in the hall was thinning out. I barely recognized most of the people who remained. It was my father who told me about them. He said these were the people who had once bullied my mother. In the end, only Haley Shaw was left in the hall, her face pale with fear, along with 6 specially processed skulls. These 6 were the scum who had killed my mother. "Clive, when did you find out?" Haley asked, her voice hoarse. Clive lowered his head and touched his ring again. "That day in the hospital, when you said I should marry you first." "Why?" Clive slowly raised his head, his gaze deep and dark. "Like an ancient well, long since dry and completely dead. Because after you said that, I suddenly remembered something Melissa once said." "What did she say?" "When she gave birth to Annie, she had some postpartum bleeding and was very weak." Clive seemed to be lost in a distant memory, his gaze gradually softening. "When she woke up, she looked at Annie and said to me, 'Clive, do you know? Before I passed out, I kept thinking that if I died, I would only feel comfortable entrusting you and Annie to Haley. You haven't forgotten, have you?' When Melissa said this, you had just pushed open the door and come in. And that's enough to condemn me? How can you be so sure I hired someone to kill her? Clive, do you have any evidence? Do you have proof that I did all this?" Clive let out a short laugh. "You're very clever. You've kept yourself clean from start to finish. You misled me into suspecting Frida. Because the Kent family has underworld connections and strong businesses in different countries. So they were the most suspicious. At first, I did suspect her, because Frida had indeed said to Melissa that she would sell her abroad. But I soon realized that Frida wasn't the mastermind." "How did you figure it out? With the Kent family's background, wouldn't it be easy to clear her name? If the Kents had really done it, they wouldn't have married their precious daughter to me again. Haley, do you think Frida's father, who has been smart and experienced all his life, would make such a mistake with his daughter's marriage? Put yourself in his shoes. Would you marry your daughter to a man whose wife your family had killed?" Clive slowly walked forward and stepped on Haley's fingers. "Did you think you were safe because you left yourself 2 escape routes? Did you think Henry Lloyd and Frida Kent could be your scapegoats and keep you safe for life? When you disguised yourself and left Henry's villa late at night, I had already guessed the general truth. He wanted you as a person, but he knew he couldn't give you happiness. So he was willing to be deceived by you, willingly becoming a puppet for you to manipulate. He hoped that one day you would see everything he had done for you. So even when he was dying, he still took all the blame for you. But Haley, you're as cold-hearted as a viper, you don't deserve it at all. He ended up like this, all because of you." Clive kicked Haley in the shoulder. "All the suffering Melissa endured that day, I will make you pay back 100, 1,000 times over." He waved his hand, and immediately people rushed forward, tightly binding Haley's limbs. "The guilty will pay. That idiot Melissa was lured out by Daisy. Henry was the one who paid, the hired hands were the ones who did it. And you've already killed everyone who hurt Melissa." Haley struggled desperately. "Clive, I didn't do anything. How was I supposed to know Henry liked me? How could I have known he'd hurt Melissa to please me? What he did has nothing to do with me." Don't forget how much I've done for you to get where you are today. How much my family has done. If you dare harm me, aren't you afraid you'll ruin everything you've worked for? You're right, Clive Lloyd chuckled softly. I am where I am today partly thanks to you and the Shaw family. But as for my career, do you really think I, Clive Lloyd, care about that? Haley's eyes widened suddenly. Clive, have you gone mad? Melissa Webb is already dead. The entire Lloyd family is yours now, and half of the Shaw family will be yours in the future. You could do whatever you want, Clive. Are you going to throw everything away for a dead woman? Is it worth it? For women like you, of course it's not worth it. But for Melissa, I'd gladly die 1,000 deaths, walk through fire and climb mountains of knives. That night on the deep-sea cruise ship, Haley's screams echoed throughout the night. It was said that her fingers were cut off one by one. Every bone in her body was broken inch by inch. She was sliced, piece by piece, with a very small, sharp knife. Her eyes were the last to be gouged out. Because they wanted to keep her eyes. To let her see how her body became unrecognizable. In the end, she was burned alive. Her charred remains were thrown into international waters. After Clive finished all this, he left the mess behind and took me back to the country. As for how much effort the Kent family would have to spend to clean up this mess, that was none of our business. Before we left, my father had negotiated with the Kent family. The Kents would handle the aftermath, as long as it was done cleanly and neatly. He would completely reconcile with the Kent family. Haley went abroad and mysteriously disappeared. At the same time, Henry, the eldest son of the Lloyd family, also mysteriously vanished. Clive and the Kent family searched abroad for a full 3 months. In the end, the Maritime Search and Rescue Team found remains containing Haley's DNA. They also salvaged a severed limb, from which Henry Lloyd's DNA was extracted. According to a crew member, he had seen the two meeting privately on the deck late at night. Later, there seemed to be an argument, and Henry even got physical with Haley. He initially wanted to intervene, but was pulled away. As for what happened afterwards, he wasn't quite sure. But in any case, the death of these two was probably an accident caused by a lover's quarrel. When the news reached the capital, people in their social circle were shocked. No one had imagined that Haley and Henry had such a private affair. Even more surprising was that while Haley was so close to Clive, she was secretly involved with Henry behind his back. She was truly greedy, wanting to have it all. But in the end, she met such a fate, with no remains left, which was quite lamentable. Although the Shaw family didn't believe Haley's death was an accident, they had no evidence and could only accept this explanation. And from then on, the Shaw family began to have a streak of bad luck. In just 5 short years after that, the Shaw family, which once held a place in the capital's social circle, had vanished without a trace. It was said that the younger generation of the Shaw family was quite incompetent. The last bit of family fortune would probably be squandered soon. I heard that Frida's illness was completely cured. She also never dreamed of my mother again. My father broke off the engagement with her. She happily returned to the Kent family. It's just that over the past year, perhaps because she had sworn to my mother's ghost that she would take good care of me, she indeed put her heart into it. Now she has developed feelings from taking care of me. She often comes back to see me every few days. But she always chooses times when my father is not at home. If she happens to run into him, she runs away faster than a rabbit. On the first anniversary of Mum's passing, I noticed Dad's left hand was wrapped in thick bandages. Later, when the bandages came off, his ring finger was missing. The wound was clean, suggesting it wasn't an accident. He took me to visit Mum's grave once. There were signs that Mum's grave had been disturbed. I understood then. Dad must have buried the only remaining piece of their connection, his severed finger, alongside Mum. When I was 18, Clive's hair had already turned completely white. Over the years, he had worked himself to the bone. He refused any help, insisting on taking care of me all by himself. As I grew older, I looked more and more like my mom. He would often gaze at me in a daze. Sometimes, he would still accidentally call out Melissa. But she had been gone for 13 years. In those 13 years, many people initially tried to persuade him to remarry. But as time passed, No one dared to mention the subject to him anymore. When we returned from Country F that year, there was a mixed-race boy 2 years older than me who came back with us. My father named him Evan. He was an orphan, but his background and family history were impeccable. My father had carefully selected him from among hundreds of children to be my companion. After returning from Country F, I gradually began to speak again, especially when I was with Evan. Deep down, I always felt that we were very similar. Only those with the same wounds could comfort each other. I had no mother, but I still had my father who loved me dearly. Evan, however, had lost both his parents when he was just 3 years old. We loved lying on the roof and whispering to each other. Only we could understand that kind of pain. We couldn't tell others, but we could confide in each other. In the blink of an eye, more than a decade passed. I turned 18, and Evan was 20. My father had taught him exceptionally well. To me, he was like another Clive in this world. I was very fond of him and relied on him greatly. When I graduated from university at 22, Evan had already been working alongside my father for 3 years. He was gradually taking over the company's affairs. Clive was also starting to let go of control. Later, Evan independently resolved several thorny issues in the business world. My dad then decided to completely hand over the reins. After graduation, I didn't join the company. Instead, I pursued the career I had always wanted to do. It was also the profession my mother had loved. Antique restoration. Oh, I almost forgot. Back then, both my mother and Haley Shaw had studied this field. But my mother always had a slight edge over Haley. Their mentor once said, "Melissa's mind is calmer, her hands steadier. Haley always lacks that little bit extra. She should learn more from Melissa." So later, perhaps this was one of the reasons why Haley had someone cut off my mother's fingers one by one. I suppose this underlying factor played a part in it. When word got out that I wasn't going to take over the Lloyd family business, and instead pursue my own passions, Frida came running to me time and time again. She even tried to persuade me earnestly. "Annie, dear, it's a sin to break a man's heart. You'll be struck by lightning for it. Even if Evan was just adopted by your father, not your real brother. There are still plenty of cases where even blood siblings fight tooth and nail over family inheritance. You absolutely mustn't make a mistake here. You're the only daughter your parents have. The Lloyd family fortune can't fall into someone else's hands. My relationship with Frida is quite good now." When she spoke like this, I snuggled into her arms and said coyly, "But we still have you, Aunt Frida. If Evan ever dares to stray, you can sold him abroad." Hearing this, Frida looked even more worried. I was originally just a pampered heiress who never had to lift a finger. I never planned on taking over any family business or worrying about such things. I was ready to live a life of luxury. How did I end up with even more responsibilities in middle age? I couldn't help but laugh at her words. "Aunt Frida, don't you think being a powerful female tycoon would be pretty cool?" Frida thought about it seriously, seeming a bit tempted. She stroked my hair for a good while. Suddenly, her eyes reddened, and she looked like she might cry again. I gently hugged her. I knew that after all these years, fewer and fewer people remembered my mom. Even my Aunt Kate no longer muttered curses about her under her breath. My grandfather had passed away years ago after suffering a stroke. He spent his last 2 years bedridden. With no one to care for him, he developed severe bed sores and suffered terribly. I heard that towards the end, he was begging for death to release him. Then there's Daisy Ward. She ended up marrying a disabled man. Life hasn't been easy for her. When her husband is in a bad mood, he drinks, and when he drinks, he beats and yells at her. But she keeps having one child after another, making divorce an impossibility. The dead never return. The living continue to struggle on. But it's all right. There's still Dad and me, and Aunt Frida. And some strangers I don't even know. They all still remember my mom. Her grave is never without fresh flowers. Her mentor often goes to visit her. The man she loved most thinks of her every minute of every day. And her beloved daughter is going to fulfill her unfinished wishes. And then there's Aunt Frida. My mom probably never imagined that in the end, among all her friends, It would be Frida Kent who would keep her memory alive, who would think of her. That it would be Frida who would protect me in her place. A year after my graduation, Dad arranged a wedding for Evan and me. When Evan and I knelt before Dad to show our respect, he smiled tenderly, with a hint of relief in his eyes. Suddenly, I had an ominous feeling in my heart. After the wedding, I canceled our honeymoon plans and started staying by Dad's side constantly. But on Mom's death anniversary, Dad left us. Perhaps he was afraid I'd make a fuss and he wouldn't have the heart to go. So he didn't let me see him off on his final journey. He only left me a letter. Annie, forgive Dad. Your mom is too lonely, I need to go keep her company. After I'm gone, have me cremated. Take my ashes to where your mom passed away and scatter them there. I'm going to find her, I'm going to find my Melissa. Annie, Dad is happy. This moment is the happiest Dad has been in 18 years. So, let Dad go, will you see me off yourself, Annie? I clutched the letter Dad left me, crouching on the ground and sobbing uncontrollably. Evan didn't disturb me. He just quietly stood guard behind me. Just like when we were little. He was my shadow, my tail, my small support. The presence that made me feel safe. I carried my father's ashes to the place where my mother had passed away years ago. The landfill was no longer as messy and dirty as it used to be. Guided by my memories, I returned to the familiar spot. I gently scattered my father's ashes. Evan held my hand tightly, never letting go. That night, I had a beautiful dream. In the dream, my father was young and handsome, with a full head of dark hair. My mother was beautiful and gentle, her smile particularly sweet. They held my hands as I took my first wobbly steps. I stumbled and tumbled into their embrace. Then my father lifted me high and placed me on his shoulders. My mother kept smiling, her laughter never ceasing. When my father looked at her, his eyes were full of tenderness. I must have cried for a long time in my dream. My pillow was soaked with tears. Evan gently embraced me. Annie, I'll be with you forever and always. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I was pregnant and about to give birth. On the day of delivery, Frida brought nearly 100 bodyguards, surrounding the hospital in layers both inside and out. It was wonderful. She truly looked like a powerful female tycoon now. It instantly made me feel incredibly safe. Evan, however, seemed a bit upset. Annie, is Aunt Frida putting on the show to intimidate me? He asked. But she doesn't know that I'd give birth for you if I could. How could I ever let you suffer? His words made me laugh, but as I chuckled, my belly started hurting again, and I was immediately wheeled away by the nurses. I successfully gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. We named the boy Colin Lloyd and the girl Marina Webb. Evan said, I'm an orphan with no name or family. Surnames or bloodlines aren't important to me at all. Annie, I just want you to be happy and safe in this life. I just want Dad and Mom to rest in peace. I just want Dad to be proud that he didn't misjudge me. That he didn't make a mistake in trusting me. When the babies were a month old, Evan and I took them to the cemetery. The graves of my parents were surrounded by rose bushes. As the wind blew, the fragrance filled the air, creating a breathtaking scene. Amidst that blooming flower garden, I seemed to catch a glimpse of the young Clive and Melissa. They say kind-hearted people are reborn into good families in their next life, blessed with abundance. My mom and dad must have already been reborn into a well-off, loving family somewhere. They're probably being cherished and adored right now. If I have a next life, I'd want to be their daughter again. If there truly is reincarnation, in that life, the 3 of us will surely never be separated again.